The applause was decorative, hollow, timed, and as brittle as the flutes of champagne they clinked without drinking. I stepped into the ballroom like a patient walks into an operating room, dignified, quiet, knowing exactly which organ they're coming for. 250 guests, crystal chandeliers that had seen better generations. The white marble floor gleamed like it had been worn to behave. I wore the black sheath dress Mother once said made me look like a lawsuit waiting to happen. Fitting. Celeste greeted me at the base of the dais. Her smile? Custom fit. Veneered. "Welcome, sister," she whispered, as if the title hadn't been revoked years ago. I returned it with the kind of nod that signs ceasefires, not peace. Vivian didn't rise. She simply lifted her glass, Ruin Art, Blanc de Blancs always, and took one slow sip. Her eyes ice and vinegar. The MC introduced me as a proud continuation of a legacy family. Legacy. That word again. Legacy meant debt in diamonds. It meant silence framed in mahogany. I stepped forward, took my position. Applause. They always applaud before hanging. Celeste took the mic, her heels clacking like gavels. "I'd like to announce," she began, "a slight restructuring in our leadership model." There it was. They didn't even need a noose, just a mic and a PR angle. The crowd shuffled. Someone coughed. A glass clinked, then shattered. The silence after was full of sharp edges. "In alignment with the board's vision," Celeste said, "Aurelia Quinn will be stepping down effective immediately." A gasp, then a phone lifted. Live. I didn't flinch. I leaned toward the mic. "Tell your mother I'll see her in 3 hours." The slap landed before the sentence finished echoing. Vivian's palm had weight. And history. People recoiled. A camera flash popped. Celeste's eyes darted. Then Vivian nodded. That was all. One silent nod that said, "It's done." Mason smiled, like he'd just won the school election. Gregory stayed in the shadows, adjusting his cufflink like it had a secret to tell. I turned, walked down the aisle. They parted, not out of respect. Instinct. You move when a storm passes. I whispered to myself, 3 hours. It's all I need. The garage hummed low and distant, the kind of quiet that had teeth. Each footstep echoed. Each flicker of light above seemed timed to my breath. I unlocked the Lexus, reached in, pulled out the case, metal, dented, with a broken clasp and the weight of history. The laptop booted slowly like it remembered trauma. Folder, Marta_14C. I clicked it. Flashback. Grandmother's room smelled like cedar and finality. She handed me an envelope with trembling hands and whispered, "If they ever forget you are mine, remind them who raised their kingdom." Back in the garage, I opened the envelope. A photo. Family meeting, 2009. I wasn't in it. I never was. I stared at the keyboard. They took my name off the door. I'll take theirs off the building. Click. Send. Emails launched. Not one. Dozens. Dozens of legal bombs flying through fiber optic veins. To the board. To Harlan Voss. To every gatekeeper they ever used to cage me. Clause 14C. Triggered. Emergency override. Majority shift. I didn't need their blessing. I had the clause. My phone buzzed. A text from a former analyst. "They've been planning this since you returned from Zurich." A tweet. Aurelia got fired at her own party. Quinn drama. I opened the side slot, pulled out a USB. Label. Family misconduct 2009. My hand shook, just slightly. I gripped the wheel. The garage light flickered again. I opened the dash cam feed. Inside, Gregory and Mason were arguing in the corner near the wine bar. Elliot just stood there, hands clasped like prayer or surrender. Another text, this time Marta. "You have what you need. Don't hesitate." I closed my eyes. They buried me under paper. I resurrected myself with it. The rearview mirror caught my face. Lipstick intact. I shut the laptop, snapped the case closed. Let's begin. I shifted into drive. Inside, the board was scrambling. I watched for 2 more seconds before backing out. This was no longer their story. It was mine. Sir, you need to see this right now. The junior staffer didn't knock. He barged in, sweat on his forehead, tablet in hand. Gregory Penn took it, his brow furrowing even before the screen lit. Around him, the others' phones began vibrating in sync, a digital alarm no one had set. The subject lines hit them like mortar fire. Clause 14C activated, immediate action required, legal override triggered. Gregory, read aloud. This action invalidates prior shareholder agreements retroactively. Emergency clause invoked under pre-certified authority. Silence. Elliot's phone slipped from his fingers. Vivian clutched her pearls. Celeste just stared at her drink, the ice melting faster than her pretense. The documents were watertight. Each signed, notarized, time-stamped. Aurelia's name sat at the bottom of every page in that signature she practiced on legal pads as a child. Harlan Voss was copied on all of it. No room for doubt. She never needed a sword, Gregory said. She had a pen. She couldn't have done this alone. Vivian snapped, pacing in a stiletto rhythm. You gave her voting rights, she barked at Elliot. He bit back. In 2019, when you told me to fix the liquidity issue, I sold her preferreds. It was your call. You sold them without a vesting clause. Because you were too busy blackballing her from the London delegation. Gregory stepped between them. This isn't your board anymore. Excuse me. Celeste blinked, stepping forward. Your stock is implicated. We all just got notified. Mason looked lost. Wait, what does that mean for us? Gregory glared. It means we've been working for someone who doesn't legally exist in the org chart anymore. Elliot shoved him. Gregory hit the glass cabinet behind with a thud. Before Vivian could scream, the lounge door creaked open. Marta walked in, wordless, dignified, a sealed envelope in hand. She placed it gently on the table and walked out without a glance. Celeste snatched it up but froze at the name printed in gold leaf. Quinn Family Trust. Original Executor Statement. 2007. Inside, Aurelia was named sole heir to the family's controlling interest. Vivian refused to touch it. She was never supposed to know, she whispered, almost to herself. The board reconvened without them. Elliot stayed. Vivian sat in a corner, staring into her own reflection. Celeste paced. Mason vanished somewhere between guilt and cocktails. A private line rang. Gregory answered. Harlan Voss. Clause 14C is in motion. Aurelia Quinn now holds interim executive control until the official vote. Your positions are frozen. Celeste leaned into the call. We demand a countervote. Emergency protocol. Harlan didn't flinch. That would require clean shares, which none of you currently have. And given the ethics audit, I advise silence. Gregory turned to the others. We still have allies. One board member stood. Not anymore. I've changed my vote. Then came another email. From Aurelia. Subject. Supplement 14C. Ethics violations, 2008 to 2022. Attachments followed. Videos, memos, voicemails. Celeste's private dinner with a competitor's CEO. Mason's underreported transactions. Vivian signing off on a fund meant for scholarships, diverted to spa renovations. She didn't just prepare, someone whispered. She weaponized the minutes. Another voice murmured, maybe we backed the wrong sister. Celeste snapped. You want to do this in public? Humiliate us? This is a family. Harlan's voice came back like a gavel. That decision was made 3 hours ago. You just didn't know it yet. Celeste stormed out. In her path, a server carrying flutes of Veuve tried to move. Too slow. Glass shattered. Liquid hit the marble. She didn't look back. Mason chased her. Don't run. You're making it worse. She turned. You think they'll forgive you for voting with her now? Elliot didn't follow. He stayed in his chair, shoulders curled inward. A man unraveling. Vivian finally opened the envelope. She didn't cry. Didn't blink. She was 12 when she won the debate against 3 board members, she said. And I dismissed it as precocious arrogance. On a security monitor across the city, Aurelia watched it all from her car. She didn't smile, but her fingers relaxed. The feed looped back to the top floor lounge. Chaos in suits. At 10:59 p.m., a final message hit every device. Board vote locked. All non-participants are considered abstained. Effective authority transferred. Aurelia's message followed. Short. Brutal. 1 hour left. Decide wisely. They read it in silence. She used to be the shadow at the table, Gregory muttered. Now she's the one flipping it. Celeste stood alone on the rooftop balcony. Smoke curling from a cigarette she'd quit years ago. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't answer. In the distance, lightning fractured the skyline. The clock struck 11. They didn't just lose control. They surrendered it, wrapped in fear. Aurelia entered the ballroom through the main doors. Not flanked by security or assistants, but alone. The lights didn't brighten, but dimmed instead, as if the building itself shifted allegiance. Conversations evaporated. Eyes snapped to attention. Phones rose quietly. She walked the central aisle with no expression. Not toward anyone, but through everyone. Vivian turned a shade paler than her pearls. Elliot half rose, then sank back into his seat like a man watching an avalanche he'd triggered. Celeste froze, knuckles white on her glass. Mason shifted, avoiding her gaze, fiddling with the cuff of a jacket that never fit him like power did. Aurelia paused at the head table. Her voice didn't rise, but it silenced all. Time! The doors opened again. Harlan Voss walked in, briefcase in hand, followed by 2 aides. He placed a voting terminal at the stage. You can't lose what was never truly yours. The quote glowed softly across the ballroom screens. No applause, just the rustle of suits adjusting posture. The vote began. One by one, names lit up on the screen next to red or green indicators. Each click was a reckoning. Gregory abstained, his shares invalidated by Aurelia's ethics memo. Others, unsure, followed Marta Reyes's lead as she stood beside Aurelia, nodding as the tallies appeared. When the final vote registered 71% in favor of the transfer, no music played. No fanfare, just the words, Interim Executive Chairwoman, Aurelia Quinn. Celeste leaned forward, desperate now. Aurelia, please. You've made your point. Aurelia's eyes didn't blink. You're not listening. I'm not here for a point. I'm here for control. Celeste crumbled into herself, sobbing silently. Elliot looked away. Vivian didn't. She only whispered, almost to no one, let her go. The ballroom doors opened again. This time the security team entered unarmed calm. No dragging. No shouting. They were only present, and their presence was enough. Celeste lunged for the mic. She's not who you think. Mom didn't even want her born. The room recoiled. A new silence fell, one not of tension, but of decay. Aurelia walked forward, picked up the mic, reset it upright. Blood doesn't override contracts. Vivian turned away. Her face was unreadable now. Elliot stood and left, coat in hand, never glancing back. Mason opened his mouth, but whatever words he had learned to use, they failed him now. He sat back down, folding. Aurelia gave Marta a subtle nod. The ballroom screens lit again. Footage from 2009. A teenage Aurelia stood outside a conference room, holding documents. The door closed in her face. A board meeting inside, her family inside. She never raised her voice. She only stood there waiting. And they never opened the door. Harland stepped forward. This is what legacy theft looks like. No rebuttal. No spin. A young staffer, barely out of undergrad, spoke into the quiet. If she leads, I stay. Applause followed. Awkward at first. Then with rhythm. Marta didn't smile. She simply remained. For months later, the estate was quiet. Celeste packed alone in a second-story apartment above a bakery she didn't own. A lawyer's letter on the counter confirmed the divorce. Her account showed $1,412. Mason sat in a downtown cafe, toggling through LinkedIn, resume open. 3 rejections in the inbox. 1 email unread, his own. Vivian and Elliot were spotted only twice since that night. Florida suburb. Sunglasses in the grocery store. They no longer answered calls from the city. At Quinn headquarters, Aurelia sat at her desk, late evening light washing over the skyline. Her meal sat untouched beside a legal brief. She opened a drawer. Inside, the same envelope from that night. Guest badge still inside. She placed it in a locked compartment and closed it. My last night as a guest. My first night as the owner. No music. No vendetta in her eyes. Only clarity. It wasn't vengeance. It was correction. The lights in the office dimmed as the system powered into night mode. 1 ping. Pen capital seeks. Reentry discussion. Accept meeting? She looked at the screen. A slight smirk. The crown didn't shine. It settled.